Last month, the Department of Defense was made aware of an Obama-Biden-era legacy program called Digital Escorts. For nearly a decade, Microsoft has used Chinese coders, remotely supervised by U.S. contractors, to support sensitive DoD cloud systems. The program was designed to comply with contracting rules, but it exposed the department to unacceptable risk. I mean, if you're thinking America first and common sense, this doesn't pass either of those tests. So I initiated an immediate review of this vulnerability, and I want to report our initial findings. So the use of Chinese nationals to service Department of Defense cloud environments, it's over.
I'm glad it's over. How in the world did that ever begin? Joining me now, Peter Schweizer, author of the book BloodMoney, president of the Government Accountability Institute. Peter, in what universe did our number one geopolitical ally gain access to our DoD cloud?
Great question, Jesse. Always good to be on with you. Look, I think what happened here was that we hired contractors. It was probably some of the big tech companies, Microsoft, Google, et cetera. And they do a lot of contract work in China. And they're all very cozy with China. They rely on Beijing to give them access to the Chinese market. And they're willing to look the other way when it comes to certain security issues. So it's not surprising to me that the contractors that would do this. What to me is stunning is the fact that the DoD officials, the Obama and Biden era officials, actually authorized this and supervised it and had no problem with it. That's the part that's really shocking to me.
Peter, I don't know if what we're dealing with is incompetence or malice, but maybe you have some more insight in that, because you're right. That's what blew me away. It wasn't that this was happening. It's that these administrations knew it was happening and just kind of shoulder shrugged the whole thing. And everyone knows about Joe Biden's family's connections to China and whatnot. What are we dealing with here? Malice?
I think we're probably dealing with both. I think we're dealing with some incompetence. Look, there are people we all know in the government who really aren't up to snuff. They couldn't work in the private sector. But I also do think there are individuals who are sympathetic to China. Doesn't necessarily mean they're communists, but they feel like, hey, China's a partner. They've used that kind of language. We can work with them. We can do things. They're not a threat. They are not an adversary. They are essentially a friendly company that's kind of competitive. So they don't view it as a security threat. I think if recent history demonstrates anything, Jesse, it's that we need to view everything that China does in the context of espionage and in terms of a national security threat to the United States, because that's how they operate, and that's the mindset that the CCP has towards the United States.
Think about them in the terms of espionage, which makes this little video clip that's been making rounds pretty revealing.
Look, we're getting along very well with China. And I'm getting along very well with President Xi. I think it's very insulting to say students can't come here, because they'll go out and they'll start building schools and they'll be able to survive it. But I like that their students come here. I like that other countries' students come here. And you know what would happen if they didn't? Our college system would go to hell very quickly. You'd have, and it wouldn't be the top colleges. It would be colleges that struggle on the bottom. And you take out 300,000 or 600,000 students out of the system. I like having, and I told this to President Xi, that we're honored to have their students here. Now, with that, we check and we're careful and we see who's there, and Marco wants that. We spoke, we're in the same position. But we have a tremendous college system, the best in the world, nobody even close. That's why China sends them here.
600,000 Chinese spies, and we're okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, the number right now is roughly 300,000, so 600,000 would mean doubling it. No, I think this is a huge mistake. I don't know if this is some kind of negotiation on the part of Trump. I mean, sometimes he kind of throws things out there as part of a negotiating ploy. But if this is the goal, I think it's a terrible, terrible idea. Because here's what we know. We know that the Chinese students that come here, they're not studying sociology and comparative literature. They're here to study the hard sciences. They only are allowed to come here if they and their families are screened as being loyal to the CCP. If there's anything questionable in your background or your family's background, they are not going to allow you to come to study in the United States. We also know that they control these students. They're all required to use a Chinese app to check in, that is monitored by the Ministry of State Security, and that the state has leverage over their family members back in China. So even if these students wouldn't want to do something to help the CCP, they have to, because there is leverage that they have. And the final thing to look at, Jesse, is just all the other things beyond espionage that's going on. We know that Chinese students have been used to organize protests on college campuses to advance the CCP. We know that a lot of the money laundering and the fentanyl trade that takes place is being carried out by Chinese students in the United States on visas. They're taking suitcases full of cash and taking the Chinese state-owned banks in the United States to launder that money. So this is a national security threat. This is not like some kid spending junior year abroad in Italy studying Renaissance art. This is something very, very different, and it is an absolute national security threat.
Peter, real quickly, I've only got about a minute left here. How corrupt are the Clintons, and are they ever going to go down?
I think the Clintons are enormously corrupt. They were the ones that first perfected what I call globalized corruption, which is they're not just involved in corrupt acts in the United States. They set up a system whereby foreign governments and oligarchs would pay them tens of millions of dollars. So they're hugely corrupt. Whether they go down or not, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. The statute of limitations has run on some of these crimes, but I do know that if there is a conspiracy charge, as long as that conspiracy is carried through in a criminal behavior, that statute of limitations can be extended. So maybe the prosecutors at DOJ can look at that, because I do think the Clintons engaged in a lot of criminal conduct in the way that they made money personally and for their foundation when Hillary was Secretary of State.
Freaking dirty Clintons. Peter, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you as always.